Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone has gotten a chance to meet some new friends, IRL, or just virtually throughout the day. I'm Max McKinney, education designer on the amazing product education team. We've been hard at work creating inspiring educational content for you all. Next up, we have Jana joining us from Capital One today. Jana is a design tools lead for Capital One's enterprise design system. And she's going to share how informative and fun onboarding can build a thriving community around your design system. She'll share some tips on simplifying complex design system topics into digestible learning plans and show examples of how she and her team created their own design system simulator. Please welcome to the stage, Jana.
Thanks, Max. Hi, everybody. Hi, Config. Thank you for joining me in person and at home. I am thrilled to be here to share space with you all and to talk about crafting the user experience of design systems. My name is Jana Choi. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the design tools lead for Capital One's enterprise design system. My work includes building and managing our design system's Figma libraries and building and delivering training material to onboard designers to our design system. I'm going to focus on the onboarding and education piece today because of how important this kind of user support is to building a design system that users love to work with. And though I'm sharing from the experience of working from a pretty large design organization, I'm hoping that our conversation today can benefit designers from many backgrounds. Small systems design teams, feature design teams, organizations with emerging and established design systems, and more. I say this because design systems thrive when supported by a community, and all of the types of designers that I mentioned are the backbone of this community. More broadly, the lessons I've learned from building onboarding and education tools don't just apply to design systems. They apply to all internal platforms. This is true because basically, we can't afford to take our internal users for granted. Of course, this includes designers and developers working with our design systems. But it also includes designers partnering with our UX research organizations, developers working with engineering tools, and teams pulling from brand standards libraries. All of these internal users deserve good user experience because well-designed tools contribute to a sense of enablement and well-being within a role and on a team. And assuming that these internal power users don't deserve or don't need good user experience is a fallacy, because not only do they deserve it, but the business stands to benefit when these internal associates have powerful and easy-to-use software, tools, systems, and experiences to help them do their jobs. Over the course of this talk, I'll explain how my team addressed the usability of our design system. My team has been on a journey to build and scale an enterprise design system for Capital One. And there are a lot of really great metaphors out there for design systems. I'm sure you've heard of them: Legos, building blocks, what have you. On my team, and for our system, we like to think of the collective digital experiences on our company as a solar system, with the design system at its core. Design systems lend a certain gravity to organizations, holding together the collection of user experiences in the same orbit. And this gravity is powerful because it provides consistency and efficiency to feature teams building and shipping products. These feature teams benefit from a reduced burden of decision-making when they can draw from libraries of shared components in Figma and code, shared UI patterns, and shared content patterns. In my experience, this is especially true at large organizations with a diverse set of users who really can magnify the potential of the design system. The scale of the design system's audience has the potential to bring consistency and connectedness to user experiences across departments and lines of business. For example, aligning to an enterprise design system can bring consistency to features that might be built on different code platforms, but are really part of one user experience. You can just imagine a sign-in screen and a home screen, which are right next to each other in a user's experience of an app. But they might be built by teams A and team B, which are in different parts of the organization, They might be built with different code architectures, different code implementations. And even further, it's possible that Team B owns this home screen, but teams C, D, E, and beyond want and need a say in what shows up there. Despite this division in ownership, the UX needs to have consistent UI and content. Nobody wants to ship their org structure, and design systems offer a consistency that keeps everything in the same orbit. So undoubtedly, enterprise design systems have the potential to positively impact an organization at a huge scale. But serving all of these users with diverse user needs can also create some growing pains. As the system grows, users could feel a little like they're floating in outer space. Users simply may be unsure of change. They may feel hesitant to adopt the new system because it's new and because it's unknown, and I empathize with them. I would say that they feel this way with good reason. It takes time to feel like that you know a system and to feel confident delivering work using it. In addition to the uncertainty I mentioned, my team experienced 3 challenges, which I think are common of organizations adopting a new or new version of an enterprise design system. So let's talk about them. The first challenge that we experienced is staggered code delivery. Our enterprise design system supports iOS, Android, and web code in multiple frameworks. Realistically, not everything is going to be delivered at the same time. Each code base has its own nuances, is delivered by a different team with different constraints. And staggered code delivery creates somewhat of a transitional phase in which some elements of an experience are available in the new system, while some just aren't. They haven't been delivered yet. And this means that feature teams have to sort of mind the gap between the new and the old system, all while working and shipping their features. The second challenge that my team experienced is how to care for complex adoption journeys. Sort of building off of my previous point about staggered code delivery, knowing that not all of our components and foundations are going to be available at the same time, how do systems teams support and care for users who are migrating from one system to another? The answer to this question is very complex, and it becomes increasingly complex with the possibility, or really the probability, that multiple legacy systems are in existence. Lastly, my team experienced challenges around the change management of transitioning from legacy to modern working models. A change management strategy is really important when developing an updated design system because the history of how designers worked with the old system really informs how they will and expect to work with the new system. Just really small differences in how the resources, documentation, and tooling of the new system are presented can affect the ability of users to take advantage of these new offerings to their full extent. At best, it means that your users could be missing out. At worst, it could mean duplicative code, detached components, and just custom work overall. Overall, the large and diverse user base of enterprise design systems are both a magnifier of value and a magnifier of challenges. Many users means many user needs and user journeys to care for. It means more time spent building relationships and buy-in with feature teams across an organization. And it also means a lot more care needed to craft communications that are inclusive of all of your users. And so, with the benefits and challenges that I've talked about in mind, I'd like to ask you all, what do you think are the elements of a design system that make it a minimum viable product? The thing is, we often think of code, design assets, and documentation as the core product of the design system. But the core functionality is only the base. This might be what your team thinks of as the MVP, but these 3 things alone will not build a thriving community of users around your design system. And I think that's the goal. Simply delivering code, design assets, and documentation doesn't solve the challenges that I mentioned earlier. Users of a design system need to feel a sense of ownership. They need to feel supported, and they need an entry point into using the system and using it in a self-service kind of way. After all, if there are hundreds of designers in an organization, they can't all ping you when they have a question. For my team system and organization, with all of these challenges to contend with, we discovered one important overarching problem. Designers were trying to use the design system for the very first time the moment that they were trying to design an experience. But when in reality, in order to feel supported, confident, and capable of problem solving when obstacles arose, they needed to have experience with the design system before the pressure was on. Other professions recognize this need as well. Pretty notably, astronauts practice their skills in flight simulators during their training and regularly return to them as part of their continued education. Flight simulators allow astronauts to practice their skills without pressure or danger and help them identify gaps in their knowledge before carrying passengers or embarking on a mission. Designers working with Capital One's enterprise design system needed a comparable solution, one that would give them confidence using the system before blasting off. So that's what my team decided to build. We built a flight simulator for designers, basically a way for users to get to know the system, its components and foundational offerings, its support model, tooling techniques, and more before a critical mission was in flight. The first element of our education initiative was the flight simulator training. As you can tell, this project is how my presentation got its name. It's a Figma playground broken down into 7 modules, which guide designers through everything from setting up their Figma environments to consume the enterprise design systems libraries, to working with complex and composable components. I'll share how we formulated our learning plan, built and released this tool in just a little bit. In addition to the flight simulator, we also offered a week of live virtual training, which we called Space Camp. Space Camp covered topics like, what is a global enterprise design system? How do we use design system tools to build better responsive designs? We showed examples of experiences before and after system adoption. And we also answered the question of, what is the difference between components and patterns? The release of Flight Simulator and Space Camp kicked off our design systems onboarding and education initiative. And after its release, we received a lot of positive feedback from our design community. Additionally, we saw more visitors to our documentation site. We also saw an uptick in user awareness of our system and its tools, and in general, less detached components from our Figma libraries. I'll take a moment here to acknowledge that you might be thinking, well, we have documentation. The information that users need is all out there on the documentation site. But the thing is, systems teams can't just offer information by stuffing documentation sites to the brim. This information might seem straightforward to you, but might be kind of complicated for your users. And we also can't expect our users to study our documentation sites and internalize everything that has ever been published. I'm sure it's a lot of information. Users likely look for information when they have a specific question come up during their design process. And so when evaluating how well our documentation supports our users, rather than asking, does the documentation exist? I think that it's more user-centered to ask, do designers know enough about the system in order to go find the answer to their questions? And that's where training comes in. We teach designers to use the system by sharing knowledge in context and pairing it with practical tools. Training is absolutely critical to offering a system that users love to work with. And with this in mind, my team worked towards building a suite of tooling training, continued education, and support channels that make the system a lovable product. There are a lot of ways to go about supporting users of your design system. So from my experience, I'd like to share the steps that my team took to establish an onboarding and education presence for our design system, and also talk about how you can use this framework and these steps and adapt them for your system and your users. The steps that we took are: define a learning agenda, choose your medium or media, develop a brand identity, and finally, build the thing. The first step to building a design system simulator is to define a learning agenda. And when considering the many topics that you could talk about, remember this. Users need to know how to use your design system, of course, but they're likely also passionate and want to learn about other system-agnostic topics. Designers are craftspeople. Whether their disciplines are UI design, visual design, content design, strategy, I'd say that they want to hone their crafts. And for this reason, I'm a firm believer that design systems training should be intertwined with training from other system-agnostic practices. Of course, designers want to know how to work with the system to make working within the context of your company easier. But also, designers want to become better designers, not just better users of the system. So any training you want should result in dual outcomes. One, designers feeling more prepared and more confident delivering work using your system. And two, feeling that they've leveled up in a holistic way as a result of using the system and its tools. Design systems teams can capitalize on craft-focused topics in order to build their system's brand in the eyes of their most important people, their users. And when we offer the opportunities to progress craft in the context of our design systems, training can become content marketing for your design system. While defining a learning agenda, my team brainstormed and tested different topics and landed on these 3 categories of topics that help designers level up their craft. These 3 categories are tooling proficiency, design quality, and system-specific concepts. Starting with tooling proficiency. Expertise with design tools helps designers work more efficiently. And systems designers are great coaches on this topic because not only are they experts on tooling strategy, but they're also the people who build, architect, and maintain the design assets that many of these designers rely on in their day-to-day work. For example, designers in my org loved training about how to use auto layout. Although Figma offers a lot of tutorials about this topic, designers were craving more information about its applications in their day-to-day work. They wanted more training on how to use auto layout in the context of our design systems assets. Similarly, designers benefited from tooling training focused on slots. Design assets are becoming more and more complicated to reflect the flexibility of growing design systems. But working with these more complex assets also requires an understanding of how to work with them, how to configure them, hopefully without breaking them. Here you can see an example of a card component with slots, which can be swapped for a number of different subcomponents. The component is customizable, meaning that a designer can show all types of content in it while working within the system. You can see that the designer still has access to all of the card component's properties because they didn't have to break it. And this is a topic very specifically focused on Figma, but it's very important for designers because then they can learn how to use the tool and use it with confidence. The second category of topics that I'd suggest to include in design systems training is design quality. Designers come from all sorts of backgrounds. I mentioned some of them earlier, visual design, content design, but they might even come from backgrounds that are a little bit more non-traditional, product, engineering, maybe a totally different industry. So providing design quality training helps to establish a baseline standard for UX in your org. And systems designers are great coaches on this topic because a large part of the design system's job is to promote design quality through the design system's standardized design decisions. Excuse me. A great topic that falls into this category is responsive web training. Teaching responsive best practices builds stronger designers who are better equipped to design in a mobile-centric world. And this topic is especially valuable if your system offers grid tokens as part of its foundational offerings. You can intertwine recommendations on how to care for designs across many screen sizes with information on what grid tokens are available through your system and how to apply them. This kind of training promotes design quality and the design system. The third category of topics is system-specific concepts. Understanding concepts enables designers to understand how their design decisions are translated into code for their development partners. Understanding systems concepts makes designers stronger communicators and more fluent in a shared language with their partners. An important understanding that we wanted to have is that foundational elements are not just styles defined in Figma. And so we emphasized through training that tokens are variables that reflect design decisions, and that the way that we use tokens conveys meaning. We organized training to demystify tokens, what they are and how to use them. And we also discussed how tokens are represented across design and code assets, thus providing this very important shared language between designers and developers. We also use training to cover component APIs, which are the combination of properties and values that describe how a component can be configured. Understanding the structure of components helps designers understand how each component works and how it can flex to fit the needs of whatever they're designing. We emphasize that what you're seeing, the properties panel, isn't just a mechanism to show variance, but rather because of how we design our tools, our design assets, the properties panel is a direct reflection of the properties and values that a developer would have. And so by demonstrating this connection between code and design assets, we helped designers understand how to better communicate with their tech partners using, once again, the shared language of the design system. In addition to these three categories, tooling proficiency, design quality, and system-specific concepts, consider what secondary benefits or lessons that you'd want users to learn as a result of participating in design systems training. For example, how to get support, particularly at large organizations, but I'm sure in all sorts of organizations. Slack channels, emails, newsletters, all of these comms channels can crowd the airwaves a little bit. So through training, we emphasized which communication channels are the official support channels for our design system, and the best ways to get support if designers had questions. We also talked about how to reference documentation, because in the past, in our legacy systems, users relied on documentation that lived directly in Figma's editor. So through training, we talked about the habit of referencing our design systems documentation site when designers had questions or needed guidance about components, content, and patterns. Lastly, we also used our training as an opportunity to signal boost related trainings. I'm sure that in all of your organizations, there are a lot of great resources. For us, we used the Flight Simulator and Space Camp to connect designers to other important resources, such as digital accessibility training offered by our digital accessibility team. The second step to building a design system simulator is to choose your medium or media. Think about your audience, the culture of your design organization, and the way that you think your users would like to learn. I shared earlier that for our design systems training, my team used two media, Figma-based training and live broadcast style training. Figma-based training has many benefits. For one, component libraries are a major face of the design system. Designers are already comfortable in this environment. And this format is hands-on. Designers can work with the concepts that you've described. They can interact with them and learn directly in the file. Also, this format is asynchronous, which means that people can move at their own pace, they can spend more time with what interests them, and they can just move past what they might already know. Lastly, you can use Figma-based training as an opportunity to show off your design system's tooling. Like I mentioned earlier, my team is investing in building flexibility and code parity into our design tools. But that's not as important if designers still feel that the tools are difficult to work with and feel that in order to use them, they have to break or detach them in some way. And so a Figma-based format is a great way to fold in tooling proficiency into your design system simulator. We modeled our flight simulator after Figma's playgrounds, which Figma shares when they release new features. These playgrounds are interactive, engaging, and familiar. We modeled our training tool after this layout because it fits in with a broader landscape of design tool training that designers might already be interacting with. This familiarity is important. We also held Space Camp, a week of live broadcast-style training. I really like this kind of training, and in a virtual environment, it works in some ways because it's really far-reaching. You can speak to and engage with a lot of people at one time to communicate your message. Another benefit is that it establishes the presence of the design system and the design systems team. After participating in this kind of training, designers feel supported by real people who they can reach out to. Basically, I think that broadcast-style training humanizes design systems in a way, helping them feel less like institutions and more like communities. Some interesting other formats that my team is considering, and I'd encourage you all to consider as well, are smaller team-based training and online coursework. We're interested in smaller team-based training because it'll help us build stronger, more intimate relationships across the enterprise and help us understand and work towards solving more specific problems that teams are having. Online coursework is also a great option that we're exploring, sort of formatted like Coursera or Udemy, because this is a way for us to provide a repository of our past trainings and maybe a way for us to reach users who have different learning styles, like people who would prefer to watch videos at their own pace. All right, third step. The third step to building a design system simulator is to build a brand identity for the training. This is my favorite step. I'd encourage you all to try to make the brand fun and based around a theme, and to also think about how the brand plays not just into the visuals of your brand identity, but also the content and the rhetoric of your training. As you can probably tell, my team really leaned into the space theme for our training, and we had a great time integrating all things space into our training content. Ultimately, the brand that you define around your design system and your design systems training makes the lessons that you teach, or the missions, if you will, exciting, fun, and memorable. Assets that you can consider creating in support of your brand identity include, of course, logos and slide deck templates, but also maybe themed playlists for welcoming people to live events. The fourth and final step to building a design system simulator is finally to build the thing. Pick a few key topics that you established in your learning agenda, and each topic can be its own module in the training. For example, we covered everything from setting up users' Figma environments to consume the enterprise design systems libraries, to configuring some of those more complex and composable components. Each module, I'd say, should be self-contained and able to be completed in 10 to 15 minutes. While you're building your training, especially Figma-based training, develop a framework or a system to navigate the experience. You can start the training with an introduction or a README to help users orient themselves within the training and the tool. For example, for our training, our design system simulator started with a pretty prominent flight manual. Next, establish a visual language to differentiate expository and interactive slides. This helps users understand the task at hand throughout the training during each step of each mission. We color-coded the different types of slides in our training, which is a trick that we learned from Figma's playground files. Another tip is to clearly define vocabulary throughout your training to help users understand the concepts that you're describing. I know it sounds pretty simple, but as simple as it does sound, reinforcing vocabulary promotes shared language and shared understanding of your systems, which is really a really important goal of training. Lastly, mark milestones. Try to be celebratory. This gives people natural pausing points as they move through your training and the opportunity to return at their own pace if they do need to stop. To round out this section on Build the Thing, I'll offer a few tips and tricks. 1, make it interactive. In general, less reading, more doing. 2, break down each step a lot, and I'm speaking from experience here. We had several revisions where steps had to be broken down multiple times because we got feedback that, what we were covering just wasn't clear enough. Third, have your team test out the training before you launch it. Questions that you can ask yourself and your teammates include, where did you get tripped up? Where were you confused? And even, where could you see people falling out of the experience? And as a bonus, think about how to get people to become promoters of your training. Is there a way that you can you give them a reason to share their participation and positive feedback? For our system, in our training, designers created customizable Space Cadet badges, which they shared on Slack after completing the design system simulator. Congratulations, you've completed the 4 steps and put together training for your design system. Mission accomplished. But we're not done yet. I heard the claps, I tricked you. You've built the thing, but how are people going to love it if they don't know that it exists? You have to invest in communications and marketing in order to promote your training and your design system. What I'm trying to say is, mission control is just as important as the flashy astronauts and rockets. To reap the full benefits of design systems training, systems teams need to think like events coordinators and communications managers. We need to build communications plans because the logistics of delivering training is just as important as the content that you deliver. A communications plan should include the written comms, channels where they'll be delivered, and a timeline of how and when to share. Again, some tips that I can share with you all are to 1, advertise the training well in advance. 2, cross-post in newsletters, Slack channels, emails across your organization. And 3, if possible, establish your design systems training early. I'm talking a few months, maybe a few quarters in advance. This way, audiences can look forward to the topics you discuss. You'll be able to schedule in advance and get on people's calendars. And your team can handle the logistics of scheduling and organizing training all at one time. Another important aspect of mission control is to collect feedback. We offered opportunities to give feedback after every mission in the flight simulator and at the end of every training. Through survey feedback and through the questions that we received in Q&A during our live trainings, we learned how valuable to our breaking down systems concepts is to our users, and that designers continue to crave training on topics surrounding Figma, design quality, and the system itself. We also learned that we shouldn't be afraid of repeating training topics. In fact, we should wholeheartedly do so, because when we repeat training and make it continuously available, we can continuously reach new audiences. All right, with mission control coordinated and everything ready for blastoff, this time the mission truly is complete. No! I shouldn't have written that into my speaker notes because I'm still not done. I'm very sorry. Of course, the conversation that we're having today is about design systems. But really, the lessons my team has learned and the steps that I described to training can be applied to any internal platform. Any team looking to scale their reach and foster a community of engaged users can benefit from investing in how you train your users to use your systems and your processes. And this is especially true for design systems. Designers need to understand how to use the system and love to use it in order for a design system to succeed. Just offering code, design assets, and documentation is not going to cut it. To really harness the value of a design system, to successfully maintain the orbit of experiences across teams and departments, systems users need support, which starts with training. I shared a lot of ideas today, and starting a whole training initiative can be overwhelming. So here's what you can do. Start small. Identify 1 or 2 lessons that you want to teach that addresses a topic designers at your company want to learn about, and hopefully a topic that will help them level up their craft and promote your design system. If your team already has a training program in place, try some of the steps that I talked about in order to turn your training into content marketing for the system. To wrap up this presentation, if we want design systems to feel like a community, a coalition, if you will, design systems teams need to turn feature designers into advocates of the system. And design systems training is a major element of achieving this goal. I chose the word coalition specifically because coalitions have a shared purpose. In this case, to nurture and evolve the design system in support of your design community. Fostering a coalition around a design system is how we reap its full benefits and maintain the balance of the solar system's orbit. It's how we realize the core of a design system's purpose. Congratulations, Space Cadet. You've completed your mission. Flight simulator construction is complete. Get ready to blast off to your next mission. Thank you for joining me today. It has been an absolute honor to speak at Config. If you'd like to connect, have questions, or want to chat about a part of my talk, you can find me on LinkedIn. And if you're here in San Francisco, feel free and come and say hi. I'd love to meet you.